Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you're watching on our rapidly growing YouTube channel, we're on the race for 10K right now, as AJ and I have been blasting nonstop on these podcasts. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, Carolina basketball regular season is officially over, and we're here to look ahead to the ACC tournament in Brooklyn, which obviously starts this week. Starts on Tuesday. Tar Heels will not be playing until Thursday because of the double bye. We'll get into that in a little bit more specifics here in a second, AJ. But it's an exciting day for Tar Heel Illustrated. Got a new podcast sponsor in this one. Shout out NIL FanBox. Really, really excited to partner with them. Here's a little kind of explanation on who they are, what they are, and then I'm going to kick it off to AJ because he's done a podcast with their founder, Terry Comer. Talked to him a ton as well over the past couple of weeks. So AJ, hold on a second before I kick it to you to explain a little bit more. But for as little as $9.95 a month, UNC sports fans can now receive authentic autographed memorabilia from their favorite UNC men and women's basketball players that will be growing into more stores. So stay tuned. Delivered right to their front door. And in return, players can earn money from their name, image, and likeness. You can use the promo code HEELS22 to save 10%. But AJ, I want to kick it to you real quick because you've obviously been talking to Terry a ton over these past couple of weeks, like I mentioned. Let everybody in on exactly what NIL FanBox is really quickly and why you thought it was just a perfect fit for what we're trying to do.
Well, and the HEELS22 promo code also gets them into what they call Tar Heel FanBox. So you specify it to your school of choice. And right now, UNC, they believe that UNC could very well be the biggest one that they have with the most people that sign up. So for $9.95 a month, you pay up front, and it's $9.95 a month. They actually pay the kids up front as well. So you get a FanBox at least once a year with a bunch of authenticated Carolina signed memorabilia. And a lot of people have asked really good questions about this. This has been cleared through compliance at UNC. In fact, there will be other announcements that you'll hear coming from UNC with respect to relationships with NIL FanBox. It's been cleared through UNC. Everything's been authenticated. They have 10,000 memorabilia items signed by UNC basketball players, both men's and women's. They did this back in December. They've got a huge war chest of stuff that they're ready to ship out with the fan boxes, and they're ready to sell as well individually. And what's really neat is the fact they did all this in a couple of days, and the athletes were paid. And the cool thing about NIL FanBox is one of the points of it is that everybody gets paid, everybody in the team. So when the basketball team got their checks, each player in the team got checks. Now, some guys will get more in time because they'll have specific items for the better players and so forth. But team signed stuff, everybody gets the same amount of money for it. So, the 12th guy on the roster makes the same as the starter from those items, but there will be other things that are available. So HEELS22, that's the promo code. It's fantastic stuff. It's totally authenticated because they have people there watching the signatures, watching the process, people from compliance, making sure everything's on the up and up. This has already been approved. UNC is all into this and everything else, which people will see here shortly coming out of UNC as well. I'm glad that we were able to launch ours, get ours started a little bit sooner and announce our partnership. And I'm very, very excited because Terry knows what the heck he's doing. And I've seen a lot of the stuff they have for sale. Regulation size basketball with the entire basketball team signature on there. And how about that? The team that spoiled Coach K's farewell game at home, you can get a basketball signed by those kids.
Not a bad idea.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And very quickly, one of the reasons too is this actually directly allows fans to affect NIL.
Yep.
Fans are like, how can Carolina fans have been kind of panicking a little bit saying, well, maybe North Carolina's not totally into it or Hubert's not totally into it, which is not true. Hubert totally signed off on this stuff back in December. Yeah. So this allows fans, like if 100,000 fans buy into the Tar Heel FanBox, that money is going to go to the athletes. Yep. So that increases their NIL. If you want more power on the recruiting trail, imagine kids coming to a program where everybody's making money. And then the stars are going to make even more money because of the items they have to sell. So instead of hoping that a car dealership signs a player and says, hey, go pitch our car or chicken place or something like that. You as fans could directly affect the NIL revenue stream for the athletes. And it will be, they'll start football soon, and then they'll go to all Olympic sports. So volleyball and softball and all that stuff, all those things are going to be available.
Yeah, it's a really, really awesome idea Terry Comer came up with, the founder, and it's just fantastic. Really, really, I know I speak for everybody on TarHeelIllustrated.com staff over here. Really, really excited to be partnered with them. Like I said, use that promo code HEELS22 to save 10%. And real quickly, AJ, I want to throw this in as well. You do have the ability to go back in time with these boxes as well and get autographed collectibles from Carolina greats like Mia Hamm, Tyler Hansbrough, Antoine Jameson. Yeah. So I'm assuming that list is going to continue to grow as well.
And it's also licensed. So a lot of times people are getting like an Armando thing from some of the places he's been before, where there's no Carolina logo on it. This is licensed because they are in conjunction with Brand R. The licensing, Carolina signed an agreement with them. They announced that July 12th, I think, right after NIL became a real thing. So this stuff is completely above board. It's a phenomenal idea. And we've already spent like 4 minutes talking about, we got to talk about the ACC tournament. So Terry will be very happy that we're talking about it right now. But I think it's a great thing because fans can get stuff that they could trust. Because like 40% of the stuff that's out there on eBay and otherwise is fake. This is all real, authenticated, and it's licensed. And you're helping your program. That's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, everybody wins in this situation. Check out NIL FanBox. I'll put the link with all the information to learn more about it. Watch the podcast that AJ did with Terry and visit their website if you want to sign up. I'll put all those links in the description below. And like I said, make sure you use that promo code HEELS22 to save 10%. All right, AJ, let's dive into it. ACC basketball time is officially back. Carolina obviously coming off a monumental win over Duke in Coach K's final home game in Durham, finishing the regular season 23-8, 15-5 in ACC play. Good enough for third place in the league. Obviously, we're tied with Notre Dame for second place. Notre Dame ended up getting that second spot in the tournament because they obviously own the tiebreaker after beating the Tar Heels earlier in the season. So, little quick of a look ahead to who Carolina is, what their potential matchup is, if I can get that word out. They will be playing on Thursday at 9:30 p.m. in Brooklyn. Going to be playing the winner of the Georgia Tech or Louisville versus Virginia game. So Georgia Tech and Louisville playing in that first round, and then they'll play the winner of UVA, and that'll decide who the Tar Heels are playing on Thursday evening. So Carolina really hot right now, won 11 of the last 13 games, actually coming in ranked in the AP poll for the first time this week since November. Hadn't even received a vote in the last 6 weeks, coming in at number 25 in the rankings. So, AJ, this is the Carolina team that should be and looks to be feeling pretty good about themselves heading into Brooklyn. It's a down ACC this year. I think there is a lot of potential winners out of especially the top. I think the top 4 seeds, and maybe even going the next 2, maybe the top 6 seeds. I think any of these teams could come in here and win it because I think this is a tournament with the way the ACC's been so down this year and inconsistent, where it just takes a couple of teams getting hot to make a run. So I think it's going to be a very, very, very interesting.
It does.
To look ahead to. But what are your thoughts on kind of Carolina's position going into it?
Well, to speak to your point right there, it does. But at the same time, we know who the best team in the league's been all year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
And I think it's pretty clear who the second best team in this league is now. And I think it's kind of who we thought they would be for a while. Carolina's been sort of trending in that direction. And on a given day, I like Notre Dame. On a given day, I like Wake. On a given day, I like Miami. But I think that your winner should come from that group of 5. And quite frankly, I would probably pick Duke to win this thing because I could see them regenerating after what happened the other night and going balls to the wall and winning 3 games this weekend and giving Coach K an ACC championship, the true championship. So they win the regular season and tournament this last year. That's a pretty good year. So, but if there is a team that comes from out of that group, and I agree with you in the sense that Carolina could lose Thursday. If they play Virginia, absolutely Carolina could lose to Virginia. And I think Duke's got a tougher bracket than Carolina does, to be honest with you. There's some dangerous teams in there. I could see a Syracuse just getting hot as you know what, playing in New York. I would like to say that they have a decent little fan base there, but they usually do. With the ACC tournament, with the ticket distribution, it's hard to kind of tell exactly, how many Syracuse people would be in there early in the tournament when they get revved up. But I also think that Miami and Wake could get hot and do some damage there. And so I think Duke's got a little bit of a tougher bracket. But as far as the Tar Heels go, the big key for them is what it's always been. How do they handle success? How do they handle losing? How do they handle this? How do they handle that? I think a lot of it is just kind of their mental approach. Now, I don't believe the mental approach has been nearly an issue the last 5 weeks or so that it was previously. I think that they were jarred that week. They went to Coral Gables in Winston-Salem by not being remotely close to being ready against Miami, and it showed, and then not handling the punch that Wake gave them. A couple of punches, and the Tar Heels kind of hit the canvas and just didn't get up. So I think that they learned a ton that week. And they're been a different club. I know Duke punched them and Carolina didn't punch back, but I think that was part of their growing process. I think the Pitt game was part of their process, Jacob. That was sort of one final needed reminder that just because it says that stuff on the front, just because you got the pretty blue uniforms, doesn't mean teams are going to roll over and die. You got to play. You got to bring a lunch pail. You got to bring a spring in your step, and you got to play together. And I think that's what we've seen the last couple of weeks since then. We've seen that team do that stuff. It's been almost 3 weeks now since they lost. It's been 3 weeks since they lost to Pitt. So I think that's the club that showed up in Durham. They've been collecting little parts along the way, and they finally loaded up everything on the wagon, and they rolled into Cameron with that one wagon with all those parts. And, oh, by the way, they played really, really well with those parts, and that's why they won that game. So if that club takes that wagon up to Brooklyn and it's with them, I think they've got a really good chance to win a couple of games and maybe win this whole thing. That'll be tough because of the legs, but I still think that right now it's kind of hard to find anybody in the league playing better than them, especially given what they're coming off of.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, that kind of feeds into the second thing I wanted to talk about. Obviously, Carolina coming into the postseason, having won 5 straight, won 11 of their last 13 games. Their last loss, obviously, coming to Chapel Hill, like you mentioned, against Pittsburgh. But they've had some really impressive wins. Went up to Virginia Tech and won. Obviously, I know NC State's down this year, but they went into Raleigh, played really, really well. That was never a game, basically. Blew NC State out, and it was only a 10-point win, but it was a lot higher of a margin of victory than that. Handled Syracuse and Chapel Hill. Purdue, it was a tight game for a little bit, but they handled Syracuse, able to win that one. And then obviously going into Durham and spoiling Duke's party on Saturday in a game that nobody really expected Carolina to win. But like you said, and like David Sis shouted you out in the podcast that you guys did, you did call that one, AJ. So we got to give you credit for that one. I
couldn't pull the trigger picking it on our site. Because that's one of those things. You pick that and they lose by 30. It's like, well, you can't live that down. So you got to stand by what you pick. So
yeah, you did.
Technically, I didn't pick it, but I've been telling, and I talked to some of my media buddies after the game Saturday night in Durham. Some of us have talked a few times in recent weeks, and I kept saying, guys, I could see this playing out this way.
Yeah,
I think this team, and I've been trying to tell our readers and our YouTube audience that they've been showing noticeable signs that maybe don't always look great when you're watching them go play the 94 feet back and forth in basketball because of the missed shots and other things. But I could tell the stuff that I just talked about, that they were accumulating and sticking on that wagon and just kind of going along. I could tell that they were doing those things, and other people saw it too. So they were kind of due for a big time performance. They were due where all the guys played at a certain level at the same time, and they got that the other night. Plus, they showed the ruggedness. They dealt with the 14-0 Duke run. They dealt with Duke leading on the glass for some time. They were able to adjust defensively and stop Duke from scoring so easily in the lane. And what I thought was most impressive was how Carolina almost flawlessly scored in the second half. They used that screen to force those switches and to their advantage. And on the other end, it looked like when Duke was scoring baskets, they were just scoring baskets. It wasn't great basketball. It was just a guy making a shot when they made those shots. Mm-hmm. And I remember Banchero hit a jumper with about 6 minutes left. And I thought, the fans are excited. Maybe a little bit more time than that. It was around 65, 63 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
It was in that range. And the crazies are going crazy. And I'm thinking, that's kind of a bad sign because there was no movement on that possession. There was no screening. There was nothing. It was just kind of a dead possession, and he just happened to hit a shot. Carolina goes down the other end. You got different guys moving. You got great spacing. They turn their drives that they were getting off those screens with the switches into layups, into kickouts in the wing, kickouts top of the key. They had pull-up floaters, all kinds of stuff they got out of that. And it was a wonderful performance, a masterful performance in many respects. So is that team satisfied, or do they take that with them and say, hey, that felt pretty good, let's go do it again? We'll find out, because they're going to be tasked with the bizarre reality of being in that environment, facing a team that's all about intensity and quickness and speed and in your face and all that kind of junk, to then having to go play UVA, which is a much better team than when Carolina clobbered them back in early January. That will be a significant test for this team to see how they can go from that style and that setting to this style and this setting. At 9:30 on a Thursday night in the ACC tournament, the only people that are in that building after halftime are the fans of the two teams. Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see how the Tar Heels handle that.
Yeah, it will be. And if you guys want a little bit more in-depth analysis and kind of review of the Duke game, make sure you guys go watch AJ and David's podcast. Put that out around 5 o'clock on Monday, I believe. So if you're maybe a little bit after that, closer to 6. But if you guys want to go check that out, they talk extensively about that game, and David offers some really good insight on it as well. So go check that one out after this one is done, of course. But kind of feeding off of that, AJ, I'm in kind of two minds with this Carolina team, because in one respect, you've got a extremely hot team coming in, an extremely confident team going into the postseason, a team that I think, like you said, in terms of that P word we use in the process, is at a really, really good point in their process based on what we've seen over the last month and a half from this basketball team. I keep saying it, won 11 of their last 13. That's really impressive for a team that struggled to find consistency at times this season, especially early on. So I'm like, okay, you got a really hot team coming in, but then you look at the ACC tournament, which I think is different than the NCAA tournament in some ways. And here's what I mean by that. You got ACC tournament, we got to play back-to-back nights if you want to win it. That's going to be tricky for this Carolina team. The reason that I know most Carolina fans probably know where I'm going with this, but this is not a Carolina team that plays a lot of bench at all. I mean, we saw in the second half against Duke, it was those 5 starters ran the whole way. And granted, when these 5 starters are on, this Carolina team has the ability, and I think they should get credit for this, to play and roll with those 5 starters and play well. I think a lot of teams across the country wouldn't be able to keep up with that, wouldn't be able to have that same level of energy and intensity that goes with it. You have to be a well-conditioned team and a talented team to be able to do what Carolina does in that respect. So you've got a really hot team over here that's playing their best basketball of the season, looks great going into the postseason, but you've got a team that relies on 5 guys for the most part. And we've seen Hubert, when it matters, when he needs a win, when it's crunch time, he's sticking with his 5 guys, and you're very rarely going to see anybody come off the bench when they really need it. So that's kind of where I'm at with this Carolina team, because I do think it's a Carolina team that can continue to win, continue to get hot and win games. But can they win potentially against Virginia, a Virginia team that, Carolina has always struggled against, barring earlier this year, and then move on? Can they do it again the following night, potentially, against a Notre Dame team who's already beat Carolina this year, who would obviously have played the same number of games? And then if they win that, can they then again do it in the championship game? I know I'm looking ahead with that, but that's kind of where I'm at with this team, because I think if this is a traditional team like we've seen from Roy Williams over the years in terms of Carolina, where they've got a deep bench, they're playing this hot basketball, they got 8 guys that they can really rely on, I think you're feeling really, really good about going into it. But in terms of Carolina being able to put a sustained championship run in this ACC tournament, what's kind of holding me back with that is just the lack of rotation. Do you think that's kind of legitimate concerns for the Tar Heels going into an environment in a tournament like this?
Yes, but don't expect Hubert to coach Thursday like he's trying to save something for Saturday, because Saturday may not happen.
Sure. You can't. You can't. Yeah. You got to survive in advance. Yeah.
That's what this team's about. I actually think this team is built to succeed in the postseason. I am
too in some ways. Yeah. And I know where you're going with this, but I kind of am too. Yeah.
Because people complained about the guard play all year, but you saw the other night when the screens are there and when the shooters are spotting, and you've got to respect Leaky enough, and that reverse layup on the baseline, the elements are there. So you have to defend all 5. So when it's like that, and you get, as David Sis said, Armando is passed by former Blue Devil Brian Zubek from 2010 as the greatest screener in ACC history. When Armando is setting, Mount Everest screens on guys, it just changes things. So so it's not just the guards driving into the lane, flailing around into traffic like we saw last year, and we've seen at times this year. There was such a method to what they were doing the other night, and we've seen a lot of signs of this coming. Syracuse is frustrating because kind of hard to drive against the zone. Even that zone is sometimes, as much as they spread that thing out on the wing, still kind of hard to drive against it. But I actually think that this team is capable of winning a game. And when you win a game, you get a chance to play another one. I know it sounds totally simplistic to say this, but that's what tournament advancing is all about. Win a game, you get up the next day, you get to play another one because the other team's getting up the next day and play another one too. So they're not going to play anybody in the tournament that is more rested than them. Now, their starters might have a few more minutes, but I think that they've been preparing for this for a while. You go back and look after Dawson left, what the minutes have been, and people complaining, why didn't he play Puff more? Why didn't he play Dontrez more? Why didn't he play DeMarco more? Because they're not going to win championships with those guys getting a lot of minutes right now. That's the reality of it. If they're going to win a championship, they're going to get championship with the main five playing 36, 37, 38, 40 minutes. Brady Manick played 83 minutes last week. He was ACC Player of the Week. So in the two games, against Syracuse and Duke, which Syracuse was a must-win, Duke was an enormous task win, right? The starters, and I'm going to call Caleb a starter on the senior night because he's a starter, right? Starters played 392 of 425 minutes. Who was the fresher team at the end of the Duke game?
Yeah. It's a great
what team had more of a skip? They have learned to play all these minutes, and you don't see them pacing themselves as much anymore. Who was the better defensive team in the second half Saturday night? Mm-hmm. And who was the most impressive defensive player in the second half Saturday night? The guy everyone thought couldn't possibly play more than 30 minutes because Brady always looks tired. But Jacob, you and I have talked about this. Just the way he looks. Just because he really looks tired doesn't mean he's tired. And that's just the way he looks. But his defense on Banchero was fantastic in the second half. He was more physical, which I think surprised some people. And Banchero was 4 for 13. So Brady's hitting threes on this end. He's popping off screens on this end. And over here, he's stopping Banchero. Now, it's just one game. But I think this team, these five, are in better shape than people realize. I think they can handle a game and another game and another game better than a lot of people realize because they've been doing it for a while. The last couple of weeks, they've done the Saturday, Monday thing, and they had a week where they played 3 games in 1 week where they were overloading the minutes. I don't think it's new to these kids. It's a lot better than if suddenly the coach gets paranoid and says, well, it's a postseason, I better cut down. And he's playing guys who are used to playing 32 minutes. He's asking them to play 39 or 40. They've all played 40 minutes of the game this past week. So a few of them have played 40 in both games.
It's been it's who they are, and it's been like that for a while.
Who they are, and they've adapted to it. They've grown and adapted. That was part of their process, right? Yeah. Their process was getting to this point. Remember about a month ago, I said, look, there's a reason they don't play the NCAA tournament on February 5th. They play it in March because teams need a chance to go through their process to come out on the other end. When you launch yourself in the tournament, this is who we are. Well, we have a pretty good idea of who this team is and what this team is. They're capable of losing any game they play the rest of the way. First round of the NCAA tournament, they can play a directional school few people have ever heard of. They could still lose that game. But they're also capable of winning quite a few games. They kind of remind me of UCLA last year, not specific parts, and their trajectory was a little bit different, but a club that people certainly overlooked when they did their brackets last year. Mm-hmm. And boom, they took off. And they did it. And I think Carolina's got pretty good parts. Yeah. UCLA's got pretty good parts, but I think Carolina's got better parts. I'm not projecting that kind of a run. I'm just saying, look, that's who they are. So the last time we saw them, we saw the high end. And finally, a high end that we hadn't. They shot well against State. They shot well against Virginia. They did play well against Michigan, Georgia Tech 16 years ago, basically, is what that seems like. Last time we saw them, they controlled that game. Once they took the lead in the second half with about 11 minutes left, 10 minutes left, they totally controlled that game. They did. This is the first time we've seen this team put their foot on the throat of a good team. They did it somewhat with Michigan too, but that's a different animal, especially that was at home. So Carolina fans should be very excited. I think that this team, I have a feeling they're not going to be satisfied. I think with the all ACC stuff that came out, Jacob, they might feel snubbed. I mean, if I was I saw the team come out Monday morning, I'm thinking, God, the ACC just gave Hubert a gift. The voters just gave him a gift. You want to cut the cord to Duke? Well, take offense to this, guys. So that might be some fuel moving forward. I know that Armando told me when I had that one-on-one with him a few weeks ago, he told me, I want to win ACC Player of the Year. and he had the most votes, but he didn't win it. So that doesn't take a whole lot to get him charged up. So I imagine you'll see a pretty fired up Armando Bacot Thursday night.
I think you definitely will. And I was going to hit on that too, because just to say, people, I'm sure most people listening to this already know, but Armando Bacot, first team All ACC, was second in Player of the Year voting behind the Wake Forest Alonjus Williams, Brady Manick, and Caleb Love, the only other guys on the LACC list. They were just honorable mention. So Armando Bacot, the only player on Carolina to make, the first team, second team, third team All ACC. And Leaky Black was all defensive team. Actually finished in third place for all defensive team in terms of the top defender in the league in that.
Yeah, there's some good. Reese Beekman's really good, and Mark Williams is really good.
Some good
people. A lot of people complaining probably haven't watched the other teams play that much. I think Leaky's been fantastic, but the other two have been fantastic well. You could have made a case for any of them.
Oh, easily, yeah. And like I said, I will say that from what I've seen on social media from Armando Bacot, even Brandon Robinson, who's obviously a graduate kind of assistant on the team, him tweeting some stuff out. Former players tweeting stuff out. Caleb Love tweeting stuff out.
Did you see Nasir Little's dad tweeting stuff? Nasir Little's dad's been tweeting stuff.
Oh, has he? I love that. Armando Bacot's dad was tweeting stuff, as you'd expect. That's something to keep in mind too, because I do think that this Carolina team will use fuel off that, and I think that it almost feels like, in a way, that this Carolina team has a chip on its shoulder in some ways, based on how things have kind of gone down. It didn't feel like that 2 months ago. It really didn't. But with how Carolina's played, I think maybe with how, like I said, hadn't even received a vote in the AP poll in the last 6 weeks, how the national media's looked on him, and
voted for him 6 weeks? Who voted for him 6 weeks ago? Geez.
6 weeks, yeah, that's a good point.
But they haven't deserved a vote. They do now.
But I think this is a Carolina team.
It's fascinating. I know it's fascinating at 23-8, 15-5 in the ACC. And they just won at Duke. They pulled away. Oh, and they just snuck into number 25. I think it's funny.
It says a lot about that.
And I think it's, and they'll openly talk about it. I mean, Armando will. Armando's a great quote. That's why the NNO gave him that award, the Colton Tudor Award, because he's such a great quote. He's refreshing, and I think he's usually pretty spot on with what he says.
I think he's
if you can get a little extra motor out of something like this, use it. I think it's cool. People say, well, they should be motivated without that. Of course. But
a little extra fuel does not hurt, right? Yeah.
A little extra fuel does not hurt. When you go on a long trip and you're going through Kansas and there's no gas stations anywhere, get a couple of those little emergency fuel things, stick them in the back, right? This is emergency fuel for the Tar Heels. A little extra layer doesn't hurt at all.
No, I don't think it does at all. AJ, before we wrap this one up, we obviously do the staff predictions for the tournament. We like to do that. So I'm not going to ask you necessarily if Carolina's going to win the whole dang thing and who they're going to play in the final and what the score is going to be. But what are you expecting from the Tar Heels going up to Brooklyn? Obviously, you'll be heading up there on Tuesday, but what are you expecting from the Tar Heels this week?
Yeah, I guess by the time this runs, I'll already be up there and dealing with Brooklyn.
Damn shame it's not in Greensboro there. I'll just throw that out there. But
it's supposed to like have a snow shower Wednesday. So we're taping this Monday evening, and I've got a little sun on my face because of my steps today. Yeah, love that. Well, they have to do it. It's the same game plan. You got to shoot well, got to play with energy, got to defend. I mean, they are who they are. I think the great thing is about this team, the thing that I kind of appreciate where they are now, Hubert, and we talked about this way back in December. They come out and told someone's going to be hot that night.
Yeah.
I mean, they just got guys who can fill it up. And when you have guys who can fill it up, man, it can camouflage a lot of other stuff. And in the NCAA tournament, I know the other stuff kind of gets pulled out a little bit more, but this club has shown lately that it has that stuff. I also think if they're in a close game, they're in great shape. Caleb, and I think we've already run my Caleb Love piece, right? You haven't seen it yet, but I went back and looked at going back to the Louisville game at Louisville, their last 10 wins. Yeah, their last 9 wins, okay? I threw out the NC State and Florida State games because there was no crunch time stuff. I looked at the last 7 wins that were crunch time wins where they had to do something very, very late. They were pushed to the very end. And I said, okay, I'm going to chart everything Caleb Love did inside the last 5 minutes of regulation. So there were 7 games. 2 of them went to overtime, so it's 45 minutes. He played all 45 minutes. He did come out on the inbound that Leaky forced the turnover when he was guarding Boeheim, but no time went off the clock. So, and the ball was live for a split second. So Caleb was able to re-enter the game. So he missed like a split second. He's played all 45 minutes. And I charted his stats and combined them in that sequence of the game compared to the rest. It's unbelievable. He's shooting 46% from three in the last 5 minutes in overtime in these 7 games. These all 7 close games. In the rest of the games, he played like 268 minutes or whatever it is. He's shooting 17% from three. His free throws, he's 46 for 48 from the free throw line in those 7 games combined. But at crunch time down to the end, he's at 27 for 29 in those games. He was 12 for 12 from the line against Duke. He's made 36 straight free throws, and most of them have been late. His assist to turnover ratio is solid when it's late. He's getting rebounds. He's got like 3 steals or something during this period as well. He's doing a lot of stuff, and he's got 7 assists. So you're talking 45 minutes. At crunch time, he's got 7 assists. Pretty good stuff. He's shooting better than 50% from the floor. I think he's 13 for 22 from the floor, and he's got all those free throws. He's drawing fouls. He's taking over games. He's been excellent. He had the dish at Clemson. He had the guys hop on my back, near comeback against Pitt. Look what he did against Syracuse. Look what he did against Duke, hitting all those free throws. So Caleb has been really good late. So for them to win this tournament, they need him to kind of not wait so long. They need him to be really good a little bit sooner, especially on the night maybe a bunch of other guys are off. Maybe the legs are tired, but Caleb's got that moxie he can dig down and take and just kind of squeeze it pretty hard. And I think that he's the kind of guy that at crunch time, and maybe a little bit before crunch time, could be huge and wins. But so if they're going to win this tournament, someone's going to be hot, right? So who do you think could be hot? I think with the attention Caleb's going to get, I could see RJ having a big weekend. They're going to win this thing. I could see RJ Davis getting the Everett Case Award.
He had a good tournament last year as well, if I remember correctly.
He did. Yeah, his career high last year it was the Virginia Tech game.
Yeah.
The quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, they had that huge run, and it was boom. It was RJ getting that thing going. Yeah. And that's the most confidence he played with last year. So there's a little bit of a precedent for him to play well in this setting. And this will be a better setting because there'll actually be people in there. There were only a couple people in the building last year. So, But I think someone has to get hot for all 3 games. It'll be a clear MVP type of performance. And I do think they can win it. I'm probably not going to pick them to win it, Jacob, but I do think they can.
Yeah, I think.
And if they do, I think you're looking at like a 5 seed maybe. I think that they're in a position because if they do, they'll pick up a couple Q1 wins there. Michigan is 1 spot away right now from being Q1. They got Indiana, I think, in their first Big Ten tournament game.
Over Ohio State did this past weekend. Yeah.
So if they could have like 5 Q1 wins by Sunday, maybe more. So if they do that, I think they're looking at like a 5.
Definitely trending up a little bit.
Play a little closer to home, so I don't have to fly to San Jose. I want to do
exactly. That. Do it for AJ, if anything, right?
Yeah, I was there a few years ago when Carolina played at Stanford, and I've been to San Jose a couple of times. I'm not exactly chomping at the bit to go back.
Yeah, I figured you probably wouldn't be. Keep it on the East Coast, make it a lot easier for everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, go to Greenville so I can drive.
Yeah, that would be very nice, right? But a good place to wrap this one up, AJ. Again, real quickly before we hop off, make sure you guys check out NIL FanBox. You can check them out at nilfanbox.com. Put the link to everything you need to know about it in the description. We put an article out as well on Monday, kind of letting people know. Put out a podcast with the founder, Terry Comer, as well. So go look into that if you're very interested. Like I said, use that promo code HEELS22 to save 10%. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. AJ will be up in Brooklyn. Tuesday, you're heading up, right? Tuesday.
So by the time people watch this, I will already be up there dealing with Brooklyn.
Yeah, he'll be up in Brooklyn all week, so make sure you guys keep it locked to TarIllustrated.com. Keep it locked to our YouTube channel as well. We're over the 4,500 mark. That win over Duke. We always say this, but winning is great for business, but beating Duke is really, really good for business.
Yeah, but sometimes – but I was telling Terry this, actually. I said, you'd be amazed at how strong our traffic is after a bad loss.
That is true. People, especially when it comes to basketball, people want to know why. People want to hear from the coaches and players. That's the awesome thing about the Carolina basketball fan base in particular. It's that diehard that even after a 20, 30-point blowout at times, you still get 5,000 views on the press conference. People love that stuff. So keep it locked to TarIllustrated.com. Keep it locked to our YouTube channel as well. We're getting close to that 10,000 subscribers mark, like I mentioned. So we're going to keep working for that, hoping to get it for the end of basketball season, and only about 450 away now. So I think we're in good shape to hit that. So you guys keep sharing, keep subscribing, make sure you keep liking as well, and hit that notification bell as well. So, every single time we upload, and we will be uploading a ton this time of year with basketball and football in the middle of spring practice. Don't forget that as well. So keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.